Is John Denver. John Denver's got a new album out apart from his tour. The album's called Higher Ground, and we just might mention something that we come to take John for granted because he's in Australia so much these days, but John is one of the 5 biggest selling recording artists of all time, one of the top 5 of all time, which is an extraordinary introduction. Please welcome John Denver in Darwin. John, thank you for waiting for us. It seems easier sometimes to talk to Los Angeles or New York than to get to Darwin.
I can believe that.
Now listen, there was an earthquake up there. Did the earth move for you last night?
It was actually this morning, and yes, it did move quite a bit. It was, it's only the second time I've been in an earthquake, and it scared the dickens out of me.
Well, talking about earth-moving events, would you like to be in Moscow at the summit right now?
I really would like to be. There was a small opportunity for me to go. I was in Moscow about 5 weeks ago and expect to return in July, and I'm really sorry not to be there right now, but I had this commitment, and I'm very happy to be in Australia.
John, where would you take President Reagan? If you were there with him now, where would you take him? What would you show him in Russia?
Well, I have some friends in the Soviet Union that I'd love him to meet, to see, a regular Soviet family, the way that they live, the kind of people that they are. And I would take him to some places outside of Moscow. I'd love him to see Leningrad. The Hermitage Museum is one of the most incredible things in the world. You can't believe the art that's in this place. And there is a cemetery outside of Leningrad that I would like him to see. They're buried in the cemetery over 400,000 people of the over 600,000 who died in Leningrad alone in the Second World War. And he ought to see that.
Would you like to get Mr. Gorbachev and Mr. Reagan together away from the lawyers and the diplomats and the protocol officers and just talk?
I really would, yeah. I've had the opportunity to meet both of them and the chance to sort of lead a discussion between the two of them and some areas where I'd like to see them addressing would be very exciting.
You had that 1% solution. You wrote a letter to Mr. Gorbachev and Mr. Reagan and the Pope some time back. Tell us about the 1% solution and what was the reply?
Well, my idea is that part of what we're trying to do here is to establish trust between our societies. And my suggestion was that we take 1% of our defense budget in every country in the world, but starting off with the United States and the Soviet Union, and that we take half of that 1% and put it into a fund to work on problems of the country of origin. And the other half of 1% would go out into a global fund to deal with hunger around the planet, and then with environmental problems that concern us all. And I think that very real results could be achieved very quickly with that kind of funding. And I think it would be very easy then, perhaps in a year, to make it 5% and then 10%. And then pretty soon we'd have to start dismantling these weapons just because there's so many other good things being accomplished.
John, I guess the diplomats would say that's too simplistic. That can't happen.
Yeah, they live in a very complex world, I guess. But my experience has been that sometimes the simple approach is what works.
I guess, again, to borrow from John Denver, the music is the universal language. I mean, it's possible for you to say these sorts of things you're saying to us in Australia. I presume you said it in Moscow. I presume you said it in China too.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
What was the answer there? Did you get a reply from Mr. Gorbachev or from Mr. Reagan or the Pope?
Well, Mr. Reagan said that that's what Star Wars, SDI, was all about. And it sort of made me laugh. It's a contradiction in terms, in my opinion. The Pope sent me a message that said, he blessed me for his work. I'd met him once before and talked with him about my work in solving the problem of hunger in the world. And so he urged me to continue that and said it's necessary for us to do everything we can to create better relations between the superpowers. Mr. Gorbachev has evidently sent me a letter that I've not received yet. And so I'm very excited to see what he has to say. It was very interesting to meet with him last December in Washington at that summit and to talk about the hunger issue, and a couple of things happened subsequent to that. One is that some people from the Hunger Project, the Global Hunger Project, there's also one here in Australia, met with Andrei Gromyko, the president's son, and talked about the hunger issue. And the Soviets have made a commitment this past February for the first time in history of 250,000 metric tons of grain to the people suffering the drought in northeastern Africa. This is they've never done anything before, and so it's an incredible step for them to take, especially when you begin to realize that that's more grain than they actually have. So they're committing part of what they're going to purchase from other people around the world to these people suffering in Africa, and I think that's an incredible thing.
John, it's ironical you should say that, because later on the show we've got Leonard Teal, who's a great Australian, who's just come back from Ethiopia, and he makes the point, with World Vision, makes the point that the $12,000 million the Americans are spending on Star Wars, probably wasting at the moment, is that figure. For $25 a week, one can keep an Ethiopian family alive.
It's a very, very good point, sir, and absolutely true.
John, let's go to your album. Well, let's go to the tour. How was Darwin? That's your first time in Darwin. How was that last night?
My first time in Darwin. I love it up here. The warmth has been especially enjoyable, and even with the earthquake that we had this morning, I'd like to stay here a little bit longer. I had the chance to go over to Kakadu a couple of days ago and found that was an incredible experience, and you know, it's really very special up here.
I can't, given the fact that Alaska brought out half a dozen songs from you, given the fact that Colorado and even Australia, it's hard to imagine someone like John Denver going to Kakadu and not writing some songs.
Well, you know, that's exactly how I felt, and I'd love to have the chance to stay there and soak it up a little bit more, because I'm sure a song would come out of that.
John, all right. Well, we're looking forward to seeing you here in Sydney, of course, but just someone's holding a card saying that your support act on this tour in Australia is Tommy Emmanuel, who's a great friend of ours too, and is a great guitarist. I'm sure you know. But in Adelaide on June the 1st and 2nd, you can catch John Denver. In Canberra, June the 4th. Brisbane, June the 6th. Melbourne, June the 7th and 8th. In Launceston, in Tassie, on June the 11th. Perth, June the 12th. Sydney, June 14, 15 and 16. And John has very graciously agreed to come and talk to us on the 14th when he comes to Sydney with a song and a chat. We look forward to it, John, as always. We thank you for your time. I know you've got to catch a plane, but thank you again for it.
My pleasure, Ray, and my regards to everybody there.
Thank you, John. Please thank John Denver for us.